Good morning, flatbedders. So how's the flatbed market doing? I've been pretty impressed with rates. I feel like the flatbed market's doing okay. It's certainly not wonderful, but I feel like if we know what we're doing okay. The interesting thing is we just got a report from Alex at Mother Truckers channel that a large carrier just went out of business in the flatbed space. Montgomery Transport out of Birmingham, Alabama. They just shut down. They just filed Chapter 7. They had, he said they had 600 trucks, but I looked them up. They only had 449 trucks, so 450. But I don't know if maybe that was an earlier reporting when they had 600. I'm not sure, but so the interesting thing that I find interesting is I'm in this space thinking, rates are okay. They're starting to see some improvements. We're starting to see where in the flatbed space we can be profitable. But yet at the same time, we have major players in our sector going out of business. So what are we supposed to believe? I don't know anything about that company as far as how they were managed. Maybe it was just bad management. Maybe it was way too much expenses on equipment. Maybe it was, speccing trucks wrong, getting horrible fuel mileage. I don't know. The fuel mileage game doesn't play as big a role in flatbed because our rates are higher. That being said, I've really worked a lot on fuel mileage in my company, and today I'm getting 9.1 miles to the gallon, hauling lumber that with horrible aerodynamics. So fuel mileage is still a spot where we can't ignore. So I don't know. Maybe they had their costs all wrong. Maybe they had horrible management. Maybe they were giving their owners too much bonuses. I don't know, but I think that we can say that the trucking market is still in shambles. It's still rough out here, guys. And I always like to be a little positive when I, make videos. But I could certainly go into the negative and start talking about all the bad stuff and start pointing at all the numbers that show, my company not making the money that we should be making. I keep saying that we are making profit. We are reporting profit, and we are. It's just not the profit number that I would prefer to report, right? So I don't know, guys. It's certainly, I think the flatbed market's certainly making some improvement from 2023 and 2024. All the reports show it. You got your national flatbed averages are like 13 cents a mile higher than 2024 right now. I think it's come down a little. I think it was 13 cents. Now it's 9 cents or something. But still, it's over last year, which last year was a pretty horrible year. In fact, my company reported a loss last year. That was due to some stuff that we did that I did in the company that was not good. That, like I did for 3 months, I did van. I parked the flatbeds and I did van. Well, that was not a good decision, right? But I was testing it. I wanted to see what happened. I was testing trucks for fuel mileage. I was testing the market. It was something I wanted to do. Turned out to be a total disaster, but as far as profit wise. But so there, and we were also double paying for everything because we had more equipment. I had 2 trailers that I was paying loans on, 2 flatbeds, and I was the only driver that year. So there was a lot of reasons that we reported losses. But this year we are reporting gains, not big gains, nothing that I can really, be excited about or, brag about too much, other than to say we're not making a loss, which is a huge improvement from a lot of companies in this industry. So I don't know, guys. From what I'm seeing, the flatbed market is a decent spot to be right now. If we look at I guess the big thing that we can say is the contrast between flatbed and van right now is huge. Like, if you're looking at flatbed coming from van operations in spot market, holy cow, it's a no-brainer. If you can do the work of flatbed, if you can physically do the securement and the tarping, and you're debating whether to go into van or flatbed, I think it's a no-brainer. I think you only have one choice. But a lot of people don't have that ability to do the hard work of flatbedding, and then we need to look at lowering costs down to where we can live at that lower level that is van. So I don't like to talk about a whole lot of negative stuff on my videos because everybody on YouTube's doing that right now. How bad it is, and rates are horrible, and brokers are taking everything. And I like to look at it a little different. I like to look at what are the good things that we can look at, and what do we need to hit in order to, what are the things that we can control in order to make our companies profitable. And we can't control the spot rate, guys. As much as you want to blame it on the brokers, they're dealing with prices out of their customers that they can't change. And they have to make a certain margin on their freight, right? Will they try to take everything they can? Absolutely. If they get a load for $4,000, they'll try to move it for as cheap as they can. So is that wrong of them to try to get more profit? Not any more than it's wrong of me to try to ask for $5,000 on a load that should pay $4,000. If the broker gives me $5,000 on that, was that wrong of me to negotiate $5,000 on a load that should have paid $4,000? No. Is it wrong of a broker to take a 30% commission where he probably only should have taken a 10%? No, because the carrier agreed to that. So I see things a little differently when it comes to that. I'm not against brokers. I work with brokers. We rely on brokers for 100% of our freight. And if I want to haul a load and that broker made a 30% commission, as long as I made profit on that load and I agreed to it. Now, there are a lot of loads that we don't make profit on, but we understand that that's the lane, right? And so, like on a lane leaving North Idaho, we might take a loss on that lane. And so we can say, well, that's screwed up of the broker to know that he's paying a carrier at a loss. In other words, the carrier's taking that load at a loss when he's taking a 15, 10, 20% commission, right? Well, that broker has to make money because brokers take a loss on loads too. So they'll, their average is about 15%. If you look at the entire brokerage market, they take about a 15% commission on average. 14, I think, is what it is. But there's a lot of loads that they get 30% commission, and then there's a lot of loads that they take 0. And sometimes take a loss. Sometimes sell the load for more than they want it for. In other words, they'll win freight from their customer for $1,500, and they'll give it to me for $1,550. They'll pay more money than they're getting, and they'll take a loss. But that makes up for the one they got 30 for too. So it's all, that's why brokers have to, we can't just look at the one time they got 30% commission and smack them over the head and call them a big meanie head, right? Because what about the one time that they gave the carrier more money than they had in the load? So anyway, that's kind of my view on it. But coming back to the market, we are in a spot where I feel like there is a dramatic difference between flatbed and van. I think we can certainly say there's definitely room for flatbed to increase from what it's at now. National average for flatbed is $2.07. National average for van is $1.70. So there's a 37 cent per mile difference between van and flatbed. If we look at national line haul, and that's loads over 550 miles. So if you go short, like I did last week, you can increase that, and you could do the same with a van, right? If you go short with van, you can increase it above the $1.70. But if you're doing coast to coast with van, you're going to be hard pressed to get $1.70 right now, especially after deadhead. So definitely there's room for van to increase. We definitely need van to increase for anybody to be profitable in the van market. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys are running a van operation, what are you guys able to do, and do you feel like you can be profitable if you control your costs? And is anybody looking to switch to flatbed just simply because they have no profits left over? And in flatbed, with that 37 cent per mile extra, you can cover a lot of costs with that 37 cents. That's my entire fuel bill, right? That's about what I pay, between 37 and 39 cents a mile for fuel. So if I drop to van, I have to spend nothing on fuel to make up the difference. So anyway, there is a dramatic difference, and I guess to be positive, I can say that the flatbed market is seeing some gains, and we are better this year than last year. In the van sector, it's not really better than last year. It's about the same. So the delta between the two equipment types is getting larger between van and flatbed. So, but that being said, there is still some major problems in the flatbed market. Rates are on the increase at least from last year, but there are still some serious problems in the flatbed market because, like I always say when I'm talking about this stuff, the hot lanes don't connect to each other. So if you're out here on the spot market like me, and you're trying to go from point A to point B to point C, well, that's very difficult to do because point A and point B to point C, they don't connect. So you have to have this huge deadhead to connect the two, or bad freight one direction to connect the three lanes, right? So it becomes a major problem, and you have to get very, very creative in how you connect your lanes together, how you build your triangles, how you build your circles, or whatever you want to call it, how you go from point A to point B, point C, and back to point A again, right? And keep it all profitable. Yes, we can all go out there and book $3 a mile freight, right? One direction. But then what about the next direction? And what about your deadheaded included, right? So that is a serious problem that we're having, even in the flatbed market, where we can say we are seeing some improvement over last year in rates. We still have to deal with trying to connect the dots and trying to be creative at knowing the markets, knowing what we can do, cutting our costs down, and controlling deadhead. So you guys leave me a comment if any of this stuff makes sense to you, and let me know what you guys are seeing out there in your guys' marketplace.